Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Pro podcast with me, Yules. If you're new here, this is a place where you can learn English through stories. All you need to do is relax, listen, and imagine what's happening. You don't need to repeat, you don't need a book, just your ears, your mind, and a little curiosity. Today's story is called The Coffee Shop Promise. It's a calm, warm story about two strangers who meet in the same cafe every week, always at the same table, always with the same coffee. They never share their names. They just talk about life, about dreams, about everything and nothing. But one day, something changes. So, get comfortable, take a breath, and let's begin. The rain had just stopped when Eli walked into the small cafe on Maple Street. It was late afternoon, that soft golden time when the light turns orange and the air smells like coffee and wet pavement. He took off his coat, shook off a few drops of rain, and looked around. The cafe wasn't big. A few small tables, old wooden chairs, quiet music playing somewhere near the counter. Behind a glass display were slices of cake, still warm croissants, and one piece of apple pie that looked like it was waiting just for him. He smiled, ordered his coffee, and sat down at his usual place, table number 3, near the window. It was his favorite spot. He came here every Thursday at the same time, always alone. He liked watching the people walk by, the cars splashing through puddles, the world moving outside while he stayed still. But that day, someone was already sitting across from him. She looked up as he approached, a woman with a long brown coat, a notebook open in front of her, and a half-finished cup of tea. Their eyes met for a second. "Oh, I'm sorry," Eli said quickly. "I always sit here, but I can move." She smiled. "No, please. You can sit. I don't own the table." Her voice was calm, friendly. He nodded and sat down. For a moment, they were both quiet. The sound of cups, spoons, and soft jazz filled the space between them. Eli opened his laptop, pretending to type something, but he kept glancing up just a little, curious. She was writing in her notebook, focused, her pen moving fast. After a few minutes, she looked up and said, "You always come here on Thursdays. Eli Dlinket. You've seen me before?" She laughed lightly. "Yes, every week. Same table, same coffee. I work here sometimes, I notice things." He smiled awkwardly. "I guess I'm predictable." "That's not bad," she said. "It means you like what you like." There was a short silence again, the kind that feels comfortable. Eli looked at her notebook. "What do you write?" he asked. "Stories," she said simply. "About what?" "People I see," she said. "Like you." Eli laughed softly. "Should I be worried?" She smiled. "Not unless you plan to do something interesting." They both laughed this time, quietly but real. It felt easy, like they'd known each other for more than just 5 minutes. From that day, they started to meet at the cafe every Thursday, same time, same table. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they just sat in silence. She always had her notebook. He always had his coffee. They never exchanged names. It became their unspoken rule. One Thursday, he asked, "Why don't we tell each other our names?" She looked at him with a small smile. "Because names make things real. And this is nicer when it's just simple." He nodded. He understood, somehow. Instead of names, they talked about everything else. Music they liked, dreams they had, places they wanted to go. She told him about a beach she'd visited once, where the sand felt like sugar. He told her about the city he wanted to see again, a place where the buildings glowed at night. They spoke slowly, gently, like they didn't want the time to pass too fast. And every week, the world outside felt further away. Sometimes she brought him a book. Sometimes he bought her a slice of pie. Sometimes they just sat there quietly, looking out the window, and that was enough. It became something small, private, almost sacred, like a pause in the middle of life. Then, one Thursday, she didn't come. Eli waited. At first, he thought maybe she was late. He ordered 2 drinks, one for him, one for her. The chair across from him stayed empty. The tea went cold. He looked at the door every time it opened. He told himself she was just busy or sick or maybe out of town. But deep down, he felt something heavier, something missing. The next Thursday, he came again. Still no sign of her. He looked at her usual notebook spot, the little scratch on the wood where her pen once tapped. It was strange how much that small mark meant now. After a few weeks, the barista, a young man who always smiled at Eli, walked over with a small envelope. "Someone left this for you," he said. Eli's heart jumped. "When?" "A few days ago," the barista said. "She said you'd come." He took the envelope carefully. It was light, soft paper, no name written on it, just table 3. He opened it slowly. Inside was a folded page from a notebook. It smelled faintly like tea. The note said, "Sometimes we meet people not to keep them, but to remind us we're still human. Thank you for sharing Thursdays." At the bottom, there was a small drawing, a coffee cup, and a tiny heart inside it. Eli sat there for a long time, the letter in his hand. Outside, it began to rain again, just like the first day they met. He smiled, not sadly, but softly, the kind of smile you make when something hurts and heals at the same time. He folded the note and placed it under his coffee cup. Then he ordered another drink. 2 teas, he said quietly. The barista looked confused. 2. Eli nodded. Yes, for the promise. As he waited, the cafe grew quieter. The rain outside whispered against the windows. He thought about her, the way she wrote without fear, the way she smiled without reason. And even though she was gone, the seat across from him didn't feel empty. It felt full of something invisible, something real. He picked up his cup, looked out at the rainy street, and whispered to himself, "See you next Thursday." The next Thursday arrived, and the cafe on Maple Street smelled just the same: coffee beans, cinnamon, and quiet rain on the window. Eli pushed open the door and looked straight to table 3. Empty again, but still he sat down. He ordered his usual drink, 1 coffee, 1 tea, and placed her cup across from him like always. It had become a quiet ritual, something between hope and memory. The barista smiled softly at him now, not asking questions anymore. Everyone in the cafe seemed to know without knowing. They just let him sit in peace with the 2 drinks and the soft sound of rain. Eli opened his laptop, but instead of working, he opened a new document. The cursor blinked at him, waiting. He didn't know what to write, but somehow the words came. A woman in a brown coat. A notebook. Thursdays. A promise to remember. He wrote slowly, almost afraid to stop, as if writing could keep her there. Every sentence felt like a heartbeat. Every word was a memory stitched back together. When he finally looked up, the cafe was almost empty. The rain outside had stopped, and the world had turned gold again. That same soft hour they'd always shared. He closed his laptop and whispered, "Thank you," to the empty chair. The weeks passed. Thursdays became his quiet ritual, his pause in a noisy world. He didn't expect her to return anymore, but still, he came. He watched strangers pass by outside and wondered what their stories were. Maybe some of them were meeting for the first time, just like he once did. Sometimes he saw a woman in a brown coat walk by the window, and for a moment his heart would lift. But it was never her. And still he smiled. He started to write more, small stories about people, moments, random faces he saw in the cafe. He filled pages and pages, and when he finished one notebook, he'd buy another. Just like she used to, he began to understand something. That maybe she had left him a gift. Not a letter, not a name, but the courage to notice life again. Before her, his days had been quiet in a lonely way. After her, they were quiet in a peaceful way. There's a difference. One morning, months later, Eli came into the cafe and noticed something new on the wall. It was a small frame, a collection of photos and notes that the barista had hung up. At the center was a drawing, a coffee cup with a small heart inside. He froze. It was her drawing, the same one from the letter. He walked closer. Below the drawing was a handwritten note that said, "Dedicated to all the stories that begin at table 3. The barista noticed him looking. "Oh yeah," he said quietly. "A writer came in a few weeks ago. Said she used to come here often. Left that behind for the wall." Eli's breath caught. "She came back." The barista shrugged. "Maybe." She didn't say her name. Just left this and walked out. Eli smiled. He didn't ask for more. He didn't need to. He ordered his coffee and sat down at table 3. The sunlight fell across the table just right, lighting up the small scratch where her pen once tapped. He took out his own notebook this time, a new one, and wrote a single line. Sometimes goodbye is another way of saying thank you. As the cafe grew quiet again, Eli leaned back and looked around. He could almost hear her laugh, soft and distant. He could almost see the way she looked out the window, dreaming of stories that hadn't been written yet. He smiled. "Guess I'll keep writing," he whispered. Then, with a small laugh, he added, "You'd probably tell me to." He took a sip of his coffee. It was warm, familiar, simple. Outside, the world moved on. Cars, footsteps, voices, rain clouds waiting to return. But at table 3, time stayed still. He picked up his pen again and began to write. She was never really gone. She just became part of the story. And in that moment, Eli understood something he hadn't before. The promise wasn't about meeting every Thursday. It was about remembering how to see the beauty in the small things, the quiet corners, the passing faces, the simple hello. He closed his notebook gently, the ink still drying. Then he looked out the window and whispered with a calm smile, "See you next Thursday." End of story.